Yeah, that's right. Well, from the frosty shores of the North Saskatchewan River, right here in scenic Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, this is your host, the man, the myth, the legend himself, me, Jack Antonio. And this is a very special episode of Do You Know Jack, the podcast, because people have not known Jack now for probably several months. And I was like, fuck it. This world's going to hell in a handbasket anyway, so I might as well get back to doing the shit that I love. And speaking of which, I have another man, myth, and/or legend. Although in his case, I use those terms very loosely. This is Colin. This is Colin of Jesus Christ. I don't even know what to call it. I'll just call it what it is. It's Behold the Arctopus.
That's right.
Avant-garde at its finest, I would say. Although, are you guys like literally? I mean, is this your selling point? You're calling yourselves the world's shittiest band. I mean, is that like kind of your drawing? This is the length that you've stooped to now, Colin.
Well, it's actually the worst band in the world is the title.
Oh, okay, I paraphrase a little bit.
Right, which is fine. I mean, same meaning, but the specific wording actually came from a YouTube video of me and Mike, the guitar player from Arctopus,
right.
From, I don't know, 15 years ago or something. And we did a interview, like a small article in Guitar One magazine. We went in for the interview and a photo shoot for the magazine, and then they had us do a playthrough of one of our songs, and it was just the two of us because it was a guitar magazine, so we didn't have our drummer.
Right.
And they had some small, shitty practice amps. I didn't even have distortion for my war guitar, and we played through a song just without the drummer, not thinking much of it. And in the whole time, I kind of had in my head the Gorguts Guitar.com guitar and bass playthrough, where they sort of explain a song and play you riffs and then play the whole song start to finish with no drums. And I was like, yeah, this is a totally normal thing to do.
Right.
But for Behold, it didn't really go over so well with the general public, and I think people were really confused by the music and by the the strange presentation of not having the whole band there and the bad guitar tones and so on. And I think people kind of took that as how we wanted to present our band. Well, either way, whether we wanted to or not, it got a lot of flack and became memes, and it was reposted, I believe, by somebody as the worst band in the world. I think that specific video was deleted or taken off.
Oh, no.
We've made our way now into compilations of the worst bands in the world. So, like, you'll see like a bunch of people at like a fair, playing a cover of Comfortably Numb and fucking it up, and then it'll cut to that video of me and Mike playing just woven in with that, and I just love it. I think it's hilarious.
That cover of Comfortably Numb is fucking amazing. I don't know why.
You've seen that one, yeah.
Like, I mean, I picture myself up there as that poor vocalist, trying to just get by, and wow, yeah, it's great.
I just enjoy how thin the line is sometimes for people between something that's sort of very intentional and carefully worked on, but a little bit outside of the realm of familiarity, and something that is sort of incompetent and unintentional, and like a lot of people can't really even perceive the difference. And I'm totally okay with that.
Well, you use the word strange presentation, and I mean, I think for Behold the Arctopus, I mean, it's a strange presentation on a good day, Colin.
Sure. Even with the drummer and everything, it's a strange presentation. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to use the words, and I mean absolutely no disrespect, because I mean, whenever I decide to interview a band, I mean, I do it because I actually, I enjoy the music, or I see it as a legitimate art form. So, I mean, I guess, moving forward in this interview, Colin, I guess we should rewind this back. I mean, because there was a lot to unpack in some of the things you said. First of all, war guitar, what the hell is that?
The war guitar is sort of like a bass and a guitar mashed onto one neck with two separate outputs. So it really is almost like a double neck guitar with the necks mushed together.
Right.
It's based on the Chapman stick, which was sort of popularized is the wrong word because it's not popular, but like it was brought into public view with mainly bassist Tony Levin, who played with Peter Gabriel and King Crimson.
Yeah.
And he started playing that, I guess, in the late 70s on the Gabriel solo records, and then when the 80s Crimson started, he was playing that. And I feel like there still hasn't been as well known or as visible a player as he. And then in the 90s, when Crimson became a six-piece with two sticks, Trey Gunn, who was the second stick player, migrated to this new instrument called the war guitar, which was essentially the exact same thing as the Chapman stick, same tuning and everything, but with a slightly more recognizably guitar-like body.
Yeah.
And a normal sort of guitar strap instead of the weird belt clip and neck strap that the stick had. And it had a tone that was maybe like a little less harpsichordy and specifically idiosyncratic like the stick.
Yeah.
But basically they're the same instrument. Same basic instrument. It's designed for tapping is the main difference. So you have your first fret is muted, so you can't play open strings even if you want to. Really, I kind of get around that sometimes, but that's another story. And it's sort of designed for piano-like technique, but on a guitar-based type instrument.
That's interesting. I was thinking now too, like what possesses a guy to, learn war guitar? I mean, what inspired you to pick up the instrument in the first place, Colin?
Tony Levin. I mean, I heard King Crimson when I was, 10 or 11 and just became completely obsessed with them. And they're pretty much one of the only bands I listened to throughout high school. Got every single record and live album and, just got really interested in that instrument and in tapping, and so I just started playing that way on my normal six-string guitar when I was a kid. And then the way I actually got into playing the war guitar was really like a very just lucky situation. There was a guitar summer camp kind of thing up in Connecticut, National Guitar Workshop. Where you would, go
up
for
in Connecticut.
Yeah. Well, I think there's maybe a couple locations, but the one I went to was in Connecticut. They just set up
it
like
kind of threw me.
What's that?
Oh, it just Connecticut. I mean, I don't know why I think of the Bush family or something.
You think of what?
I don't know why, but I think of like George H.W. Bush and stuff like that whenever the word Connecticut comes.
Oh, just because he can't
up
say
in
it.
Connecticut.
So basically
Sorry,
it was a summer workshop kind of thing. So I went for a 5-day course, and usually you would be studying, guitar leads or jazz guitar or something like that. But they had a special that year where you could rent a war guitar for the week for like $35 plus the cost of the class, and get sort of a basic tutorial on how the thing works from somebody who played war guitar. And Mark War, who makes the instruments, made a sort of stripped down, cheaper version of the instrument specifically for all the people that signed up for the class. So there was like 5 people in the class, me and my friend and 3 other people. And we were able to, check out this instrument for the week, learn a little bit about it. And then at the end, they offered it for kind of like a ridiculous discount, like a third of the price or something. So it was actually affordable to a teenager, which is the big difference, because usually these instruments are they're all custom made to custom order. You have to wait a couple years to get them. So this was like my way in at a young age, which is pretty rare.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not like there's a pawn shop full of war guitars somewhere in upstate New York.
No. The funny thing is, I actually, after moving to New York City, I did see a war guitar in a guitar shop once, and it blew my mind. But it was, it was there for a week and then gone, and never seen one again in the store.
Yeah. Well, now let's get to the record then. Now that you've given me your full bio behind the instrument, the record is called is it Hapeleptic Overtrove?
That's it.
That's the correct pronunciation.
Yes.
So I even tried Googling what Hapeleptic is. Nothing came up. Did you just make this thing up? Like I'm confused here. I'm trying to, I guess I should be, I could read the information provided for me, but I don't know if a definition is actually ever provided in your press release.
No, I don't think it is either. It is absolutely a made up word. Behold, the Arctopus has a long history of using made up words.
Right.
So, yeah, we were I always struggle with titles, and the music being instrumental, and me not really being much of a lyrics guy. I've always struggled with that. So I think Overtrove was Mike's word that he just came up with one night when we were having a practice last year, and we just both died laughing. And I was trying to come up with another word to add to it, and it literally just popped into my head one day. That's the extent of it.
So then, I mean, it's hard to label avant-garde music, but I mean, I'm hesitant to even say that this is metal because it sounds like a bizarre bastard child of free jazz and that avant-garde classical music, as Varese is, I think, mentioned in the bio here too, which
Absolutely.
or like really weird Frank Zappa shit.
Sure. Yeah. I noticed one or two other people mention Zappa. I'm actually super ignorant about Zappa. I never really spent any time with him, but of what I know, I can totally see that connection. So it's not really influenced by him, but I totally accept the parallel and, have nothing but respect for the guy.
Well, he was a disciple of Varese. Like in his own writing, he was basically just like in his more classical leaning writing, he was sort of more or less a cheap imitation of Varese. So, I mean, it's not that hard of a stretch, really, even if you've never heard Zappa, that somebody that maybe wouldn't be familiar with Varese would, see the Zappa influence as opposed to the former.
Yeah, that actually totally makes sense to me. And having heard just a little bit of Zappa's classical, I can totally see that connection.
So, I mean, are you saying that you are like very influenced by, guys like Varese?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, from the beginning of the band, I had this vague idea to sort of have a instrumental technical metal band, for lack of a better term, but treat it almost as a chamber group. So right after the first couple songs, we moved to writing everything away from the instrument, just in notation. We'd learn it later. It was completely distanced from the rock way of writing. Now on the new record, I've started writing on the instrument again, but the sound has actually become more classical, because over the years I've kind of realized that the notation aspect of it slowed things down a little bit too much. Like I would write these pieces, and then my bandmates would try to sight read them at practice, and it's just not really sight readable stuff. So the way I did the new record was I just sampled this new drum kit we came up with, programmed drum parts in Logic, played the guitar parts, played the war guitar parts, and then for Mike, the guitar player, to learn the stuff, instead of writing it down, I just would divide the song up into maybe 5 to 15 pieces and make videos of each piece with me playing the guitar part half speed and then full speed, and then just sent him a bunch of videos, and he learned the song that way. And we were able to actually get material together like about twice as fast.
Right. But I mean, just to clarify though, you did have an actual drummer on the album, right?
Yeah, actually, our drummer, Jason, who's been with us for this album and the previous one, he really was a big part of this new drum sound that we developed, because it was something I'd been wanting to do for a while. I've been, I run a recording studio too, so I do nothing but sort of record bands and drummers. And I was just getting really tired of the sound of the traditional drum kit. For one thing, in the kind of music we're asking it to play these days, it is not suited for that. It's fundamentally the raw, quote unquote, wrong sounds for playing like super fast, shreddy, distinct material. The biggest problem is that cymbals are about 1,000 times louder than drums. And the faster you play on a drum, the less hard you can hit, and the less of the desired tone you get. And the more the cymbals just drown out the drums, and then you have distorted guitar, which is sort of a wall of noise that it's competing with. So you have all these instruments competing for the same space, and to actually carve out room for each of them, you end up with really strange sounding productions. And that's why, I was never attracted to metal production growing up, because it just sounded too worked on and weird and unnatural to me. And I was always really attracted to classical recordings. And in rock, I would be way more into Led Zeppelin, for Houses of the Holy, Physical Graffiti, like that sound, than I was into I don't know, something like Fleetwood Mac, which is just sounds overproduced to me, even the '70s version of that. So having this frustration with the instrument itself and being so into the sound of classical recordings, I was like, I think I can figure out a way to actually combine these. So Jason had gone to conservatory and played a bunch of 20th century classical and Xenakis and pieces that I was really into. So he had some Almglocken, he had this wooden plank, he had a metal pipe, and a bunch of these sort of small bell splash cymbal things. So we just sort of created a new palette of sounds with that, set up this drum set, and then, like I was saying before, I just to be able to write the material, I sampled that new drum set, wrote the material, then after it was written, we sat down together, he wrote it all down the way he wanted it to look, he memorized it, and then played it. So,
I was just going to say now, given the polyrhythmic nature of a lot of this stuff, I mean, how many passes are you guys doing in the studio before you get it entirely right? I mean, you know, how natural of a performance is coming off in what I'm hearing in the record?
So for me and the drums, it's actually incredibly live and unedited. We actually just recorded, so the guitarist, we're a long distance band now, so me and the drummer live in New York, but our guitarist moved back to LA where he's from. So we did the recording in 3 separate sessions, just me and the drummer, and then Mike came in and overdubbed. But for the session with just me and Jason, we didn't even isolate amps from drums. We just played together in the same room, totally classical style. Although I did close mic things. There's actually the first and last song in the album has no close mics on the drums, so it's a total classical style recording, just room mics.
Right.
But for the rest of them, I mic'd everything up separately, but we just played live together. No click tracks, no headphones. And we, on some of the tracks, we might have played the song 3 or 4 times and then maybe edited the beginning of this take onto the end of that take, things like that, sectional edits. But there's no punch-ins, there's no playing parts of the songs. Like, even, I'll give you an example too, like even tracks 2 and 3 on the album, they're separate songs, but they were written to flow together, and we actually recorded them that way. We played the 2 songs in a row, and that's what you hear.
Wow.
So then the guitar, Mike's parts, he came in later and overdubbed, and that was done a little bit more piecemeal, as for some reason, with recording lots of metal bands, that seems to always be the way it is. For some reason, the guitar is always more piecemeal. Not always, but often. And then that's it. So the rhythm section done incredibly live and straightforward, and then the guitar just sort of like normal rock overdubbed guitar.
Yeah. Now, like, I mean, given the fact then too that the music is so rhythmically complex, I mean, you know, how often does Behold the Arctopus get together to perform live? And what would a live performance of your band look like at this point?
Well, in terms of practicing, the way we've been doing it is Jason and I get together every Monday morning, and we sort of spend a couple hours rehearsing the material by ourselves, him in one room of the studio and me in the other. And then we get together and we play through everything. And our actual together practice often will only last 20 minutes or something. And then we only get to play with Mike like a couple times a year. And that would be typically right before we record, or maybe right before we do a tour. And since for this new album material, we've done 4 tours, two last year and 2 in 2018. And so it was kind of like that. We would maybe get together, practice for a day, and then do the shows. Mike was actually not able to join us for the tours in 2018 because he got sick. And we just did all the shows without him, because what else were we going to do? So we just played as a duo. I even had a piece that was a duet of war guitar and guitar that I just ended up playing by myself, which was pretty funny. But so playing together is pretty rare just because of the distance at this time with all 3 of us. But the war guitar and drums have sort of like a weekly routine.
Yeah. No, that's fair. So given the, complexity of the, environment we're in with like COVID-19, I mean, it sounds like you're located in New York right now.
Yeah. Both me and Jason live in New York City.
So, how are you handling things there right now, given the fact that it's being kind of labeled as ground zero right now for the virus?
Yeah, I mean, we're just doing what everybody's doing, hopefully, which is just staying inside, and just hope that it doesn't last too long. I mean, it seems like it's going to last longer than anybody wants it to. I think that's the only sure thing.
Yeah, I think people are trying to be optimistic and being like, maybe this thing will clear up and we'll still be able to have a bit of a summer. But I'm starting to really, yeah. I mean, who
Yeah,
knows, right? I mean, none of us are doctors, none of us are scientists, none of us can really predict how long this thing is going to last. But I mean, in the meantime and in between time, like, holy shit, man, you gotta, you gotta stay safe over there, dude.
exactly. Yeah, so I'm in no hurry to be around people or go anywhere. I'm just fine waiting here.
Exactly. Well, and you mentioned now that you're also affiliated with Gorgut. So, I mean, what would any plans from that camp?
Not really much news to report. We've kind of been on like not an official hiatus, but I guess it's been one just because nothing's happened in a couple of years. But we did a lot of touring after Pleiades stuff came out, and I think in 2017 we did like 4 tours just in the first half of the year. And I think we were all kind of like at that point wanting to work on new material, and me especially, and I also was getting a little too busy in the tours. It's tough to make enough money to keep the studio open when I go on tour even with Gorguts. So they did one tour without me with Forest on bass in Europe in like August or something of 2017, and that's the last Gorguts has played. And since then, we've basically just been waiting to hear from Luke with some new music to work on, and then hopefully we'll get together and practice and write a new record and go from there. I have a couple pieces actually written for the band, one from way back in 2012 and one from just last year that I kind of just wrote, out of like wanting to just get it going again. So those may or may not get worked on. I think what Luke wants to do is write something first and sort of decide the new direction of the new album, and then we'll sort of see if the stuff that I wrote fits in.
Right.
So it's interesting because there has been some progress, but we haven't actually gotten together or worked on anything.
Well, listen, man. The album is called Hapeleptic Overtrove. It is by Behold the Arctopus. It releases on Willowtip Records /P2 on June 12th of this year, 2020, man. And of course, you are listening to Colin Marston on the line with me, Jack Antonio, right here on Do You Know Jack, the podcast. Colin, thank you so much for getting on here and just sharing a little bit about your art, man, because that's what you guys do in Behold the Arctopus. It's art, and it wouldn't be art if we weren't discussing and arguing about it. You know what I mean?
Yes. I love that. I am more than happy to receive the hatred and the praise combined, or neither. Like, it's all good. It's just art. You can feel any way you want about it.
Well, with that, man, stay well, and hopefully we'll hear from you soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Jack.
All right. Bye-bye.